Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. Today on What's My Frame, I'm chatting with two-time Emmy Award-winning director Mary Lou Belli. Mary Lou has been directing television for over 30 years. Her credits include NCIS New Orleans, Black Lightning, Bull, Station 19, Heart of Dixie, and Charles in Charge. Mary Lou has served 2 terms as the co-chair of the Women's Steering Committee at the DGA. She's an honorary board member of the Alliance of Women Directors and an advisory board member of Women in Media and a longtime member of Women in Film. Through her teaching, she supports many of the vibrant diversity programs, including ABC Disney, CBS, Sony, HBO Access, AFI's Directing Workshop for Women, and Warner Brothers, helping mentor and shape the next generation of directors. Please join me in welcoming the exceptional Mary Lou Belli. Hey Mary Lou, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so pleased to be here.
You are our first female director, and I am so excited to talk to you and just pick apart all of the amazing accomplishments that you've been working on for over 20 years. Can you actually dive in and tell us how you got to where you are now and just like the steps and stages of your career?
I think I am the director I am today because I started out as an actor. And I had I went to a conservatory program at Penn State. I did it in 3 years and graduated and chose to move to New York and started working there almost immediately as an actor. So I sang and I danced, which helped, especially in New York.
Yeah.
So, but the training I had there and then the training I continued in New York really was paramount to making me the director I am. And it kind of weaved my way into the career I had because I didn't stay in New York that long, moved to California, got a position on a television show where I was understudying. I know that sounds so weird because it's such a theatrical term, but there was a TV series for CBS that was 4 main characters and 2 of them were children. So they hired an adult actress, me, to kind of stand in, but also become the coach for that young actress who is now a prominent, she never stopped acting, but she's a prominent director herself now. Her name is Megan Follows.
Wow.
Yeah, so Megan is now a hyphenate in terms of a director as well. So, and I'm proud that I can say I taught her to drive on the back lot of Universal, amongst my other accomplishments. My coaching, my acting morphed into coaching, which morphed into directing. And because theater had been my home, the first natural place, and it was because I had access to it as well, was on a multicam sitcom. Mm-hmm. And that was called Charles in Charge. It's the first thing I ever directed, but at the same time I was honing my craft as a director in the theater, and I directed and or produced close to 75 new works in the theater. Some produced here, some sold to television, some were produced in New York as well. But I kind of practiced my craft there. And because sitcoms were so close to theater, because we rehearsed for 3 days, then shot, I stayed there for a long time, directing well over 100 episodes, and then decided I really, really loved the genre of drama. Mm-hmm. And I loved what it afforded me as a director in terms of my palette was bigger.
Yeah.
The stories I got to tell were things I related to more. And even though I had this facility with comedy and understood the structure and the rhythms and all that, it was a natural segue for me to direct dramedies. So Monk was my first one. Heart of Dixie came after that. And I still think that being a director who knows comedy intimately and knows how to really get those kind of performances, it enhances everything I do as a dramatic director now, and a person who's now known as an action director who basically, is hired to blow shit up.
It's really fun though. It's
I
really
know, I
fun.
know. It is fun. It really is fun. I love the job.
Yeah. Can you walk us through your creative process when preparing to go on to direct an episode?
Yeah. Once I have the job, I'm basically waiting for the script. But before that arrives, my pre-production time is spent studying the show, um, contacting key people like the casting director, the production office, the uh, the the creator of the show, just to say, hey, what are the quintessential episodes that you would like me to emulate, or what is in essence like the perfect monk or the perfect, whatever. So I can study those to really be able to deliver, because that's basically the job of the episodic director. I'm not recreating the wheel. They ordered a pizza, I'm delivering the pizza, I'm just adding my extra toppings, and hopefully elevating what they've given me
Yeah.
to the best it can be. Um, uh, Once I get the script, I read it through without any interruptions, without taking any notes, so I can basically grasp the story and to see my first impressions, because it's the last time I will ever get to be the audience for this
Hmm.
with only that first impression.
Yeah.
So then I break it down out with a tool that was given to me by my now dearest friend Bethany Rooney, and who co-authored the book Directors Tell the Story that we wrote together. But she calls it. It was first started out as Bethany's cheat sheet, but now we refer to it as the director's diagram. So it's basically plotting the story in terms of breaking it down into the ABC or D stories, whatever. For me, on a big episodic or a whodunit, I'm also looking specifically at the clues and how they line up as the audience discovers them. And I use this tool for me to catch up to the writer who's had this story in their DNA way longer,
Absolutely.
and for me to you know, I like puzzles, not crossword puzzles, but puzzles in terms of piecing things together.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about dividing it into the puzzle pieces and then seeing how the puzzle pieces fit back together. So I do that next, and then I start into my myriad meetings, which go on and on and on during prep.
Mhm.
But basically, hopefully, by the last one, the last production meeting before my tone meeting, um, every department now knows my vision for the episode. They are completely in control of the creative input and aspects that they're bringing to it.
Yeah.
They'll be ready on the day, with the help of the guidance and my partner, my AD, and my cinematographer, and all the department heads, in terms of then getting ready to shoot. And my favorite day of prep is the day that I location scout
Oh,
with, or actually when I tech scout after having location scouted and picking all my locations, because on tech scout, I'm basically showing the crew
mhm.
uh, what I have chosen for the sets they don't know. And then they know all the other sets because they're standing sets or ones that have recurred or whatever.
Mhm.
And basically, I've done my homework because I know how I'm going to shoot all those already. Uh, and then I get to the fun of
Yeah.
working with actors again and shooting scene by scene, out of order,
Yeah.
but knowing how they're going to add up because I've done my homework.
Amazing. I love how you put that, of the way that you do your research and that you're, reading the script uninterrupted as an audience member for the first time. And I want to go off of that because episodic directors are much like the guest cast, and you are joining an established show, and you're also the new kid at school to a certain
I am
to a certain
completely.
extent. Do you have any advice for actors that are coming on to an established show of, you know, how to land on their feet, how to be of
Well,
service on the set?
yeah. Okay, so it's what I do is, first of all, as the director du jour, I am basically a guest, and I try to be the best guest possible. And now the best guest, my mother taught me to always bring a gift. Hopefully my gift is my preparation and that I know what the heck I'm doing. But I treat people respectfully. I know all the people's names. I know what they do. So as an actor, you can go beyond, what's the whole script about. I've hopefully read the whole thing through if it's available, which 90% of the time it is. Unless you were doing Sopranos, and then you never knew. Um, and had to keep it a secret, if you did. But basically, I try to learn everyone's names, and knowing what they do so that when I address a question to them, I want to know the world I'm coming into. So I do as much help as I can or research as I can about the show, about the people who have already worked on the show. Like if I were a guest actor, I would make sure I knew the 2 or 3 series that the leads on the show had done before this, or films. Make sure I've seen every past episode available to watch, especially if you're not in if you're in a storyline that enters their world, you can get a feel for the sets, and then your preparation becomes very, very specific. If you're going to be in their squad room or their kitchen or their, interrogation room, you could even, before you audition, get a real feel for that. And for me, when I see an audition of an actor who sort of fits into our world, and because they know they fit into our world, because they know what our world is, I always go, if you convince me that you tell the story the best, you get the job. And sometimes that's not breaking things like, oh, that would never happen in our world because, if he did that, it's not NCIS or it's not Bull or it's not. So just by knowing the world, and then of course the style of acting that's required, big, small, highs and lows, how high are they, how low are they, in terms of the style and tone of the show, then you get the job. I also don't assume you know anyone who you have not been introduced to. Just know that you're coming to a family that, and assume they have lots of secrets and are protective of them. So don't try to wait to be invited before you try to push your way in.
Very nicely put.
And be of service. I tell this to anyone in the business, always give to get. So if your give is, I know this scene backwards and forwards, I can do it in one take, I can, I will not need pampering, I will come to set as soon as invited, I will bring ideas, but not foist them. And then come also with an enthusiasm and a joy because you've come to play.
Exactly.
And so therefore, you're the guest at the party where I go, I always say I'm a terrible guest at a real party. But my sister is the best. My sister can talk to anyone. She is truly, truly interesting because she's always interested.
Yes. It's so much about the listening.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's not that, you don't want to show off. You don't want to show off how much you know about them. You just have it. But at the same time, I also would say, this is just to be careful. And I'm a person who has never read a National Enquirer or a Star, never. But I will do a quick internet search to see if there's anything that comes up immediately so that I don't walk into a situation that the whole world knows about and I don't. Like, let's say a 15-year relationship that just blew up.
Yeah.
That you go, oh, how's so and so, and they get this look on their face, like you go, oh fuck.
Feel like whoopsie.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to go back, like you were talking about in the actual audition room and people coming in just fully embodying the world. The flip side of that, what are some of the easily avoidable mistakes that you see actors make in the room where maybe with good intentions, maybe
Well,
they didn't have good intentions, but just easily avoidable mistakes in the room?
well, the easiest is, do you know the world and have you read the script? And
Yeah.
I'm talking every stage direction, because there is a hint of things they need to know in there. Any acting teacher who tells you to cross out the stage directions is a fool, a true fool.
Yeah.
It's just the
Do not give them your
stupidest
money.
advice you can ever get. In fact, I say mind those stage directions, because they haven't been written lightly.
Yeah.
And they basically give you the hint of exactly what they're looking for. So form your character and make your acting choices based on not just the dialogue, but the subtext and the stage directions. So that's the first thing that would help any actor. The second thing is, don't say anything negative and don't bring any of your personal garbage into the room. I don't want to know you couldn't find a parking space. I don't want to know, come joyful with the expectation that I get to act today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great thing to be able to do. I would say those are the main two, and then make sure you make strong choices.
Mhm.
I'd rather change a choice than have to impose a choice because a choice has never been made.
Yeah. So you would rather see that they have that range or that creativity, even if it's not the one you want to use in that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very perceptive.
You directed an absolutely beautiful episode of Station 19, Contain the Flame. What was it like to join the Shondaland universe? I mean, that is just.
It was great. I met one of a very, very dear friend, the woman who wrote the episode and was one of the producers on the show, Wendy Calhoun. Um, uh, that show will always be the gift that gave me her in my life.
Uh,
And working with Paris Barkley for the second time, who was the exec producer, who had brought me over after we had such a fantastic relationship on pitch, the Fox show we had done together. It was wonderful to join them. It was a great reunion for me with Jason George, but
yeah.
it was a great, great learning experience for me, because I was entering a world that had real interesting rules and habits, and I found out I could rock the boat a little bit, but not too much. And I got to work with a group of great actors, really, really great actors, many of whom I'm still very, very close to and still in touch with. And my favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes in that, there were two of my favorite scenes. One was Jason in the locker room, um, where he's giving advice. And I had come in with some ideas about how I thought the scene might work. And he said, no, I really see it here. And because I trusted him so profoundly, I let him go with that. And it turned out to be a simple but perfect scene. And then and this is one of the reasons I got the job, I knew Grey's Anatomy inside out and backwards. I don't think I'd missed a single episode. And I had talked about the previous season finale in the meeting before I got Station 19. So if this was going to fit into the Shonda world, which it found its way into, that first season was, but it's there now. It is. Krista Vernoff has just like exploded this show into exactly what I always hoped it would be.
This season has been incredible.
It's been incredible. But I had one scene that was of that world, and it was the three girls on the porch. And it just, I went, oh God, this feels like Grey's Anatomy. This is the show I want to be directing. as opposed to a show that felt like 911 and was all about fire or
Yeah.
I wanted to say less fire, more characters.
Yes.
And that's really what it has become. Not that they don't deal with a fire every week, but
Mhm.
they've really found they're a wonderful niche where they should be on that show. And the actors have just grown into their parts so beautifully. And it was a great experience. And I'm uh, happy for the friends I made on it, and especially for Wendy Calhoun.
Yeah. Now, like you were talking about the meeting that you had for directing the episode, I think often actors think directors are just contacted and handed episodes to direct. And you
Yeah.
guys are, in effect, auditioning and meeting and pitching yourselves consistently.
Consistently, yeah.
Yeah.
And now some less than others,
Mhm,
but I would say for a new show that I'm new to,
mhm.
and especially if I'm coming in second, third season, fourth season, I've watched every single episode of that show. I have studied the visual tone of that show. I have looked up all the actors. I've done a vision board for that show. I mean, I do all these things
Yeah.
to go in for that 45 minutes to an hour. And more than half the time, none of that comes up because we're not talking about the show.
Mhm.
They assume I've done all that work. And if
Yeah.
one question comes up, that I can just riff on it. But it's basically a show about getting to know me. It's
Mhm.
about getting to know my personality and to see if I would fit on the show. I had a very interesting Netflix um, Zoom call. Was it a Zoom call, a FaceTime call?
Yeah.
I can't remember what platform we did on, but it was my first one at the beginning of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And I had been asked to look at two or three shows, one of which they knew was coming back, another one that one of the uh, writer producers had a new show that no one knew about yet, but that was going to be on at Netflix as well. And then a third show where I had directed the star of the show before. And I said, you know, I love this show. I talked about the world. I talked about the visual tone. I was perfect for it. And then there was another show they asked me to watch, and I went, I'm not the director for this.
Uh,
And the Netflix executive, whose last name was Corona, we had a laugh about that,
oh,
said to me, I can't tell you how many times I take interviews with directors and they think they're perfect for everything. He said, it's so refreshing.
yeah.
And the feedback to my agent was, she's such a professional, because I, I could I direct that show? Yeah, but it wasn't a great fit for me,
Yeah.
you know? And it didn't excite me to direct the show. There was so much I disliked about the show. I cannot tell you. I hated the way it looked. I hated, I disliked the subject matter. I thought, and it's interesting because I've been invited on shows where I go, I know nothing about this world.
Mhm.
And the more research I do, the more I fall in love with it.
Yeah.
You know, for me to say, oh my God, I can't wait to direct another vampires or werewolf show is absolutely the truth. Or I can't wait to get into that superhero universe some more.
Yeah.
But there's ones that you just go, this feels like that I would be able to bring something, that
Mhm.
I could bring those toppings for the pizza, and I
Yeah.
would bring great toppings.
Yeah. And being honest with yourself and knowing what you can enhance and what's better for someone else to take
Yeah,
on. And
yeah.
a lot of times as creatives, we get so excited to get anything's better than being still. And that's not actually the case. And
Well, but as you know, we're in a new world in terms of um, entrepreneurial pursuits, and um, people can create things for themselves. You know,
yeah.
I mean, that was not the case when I started out in the business. The power was in very few hands. The people who got the opportunity to create new things was a very few who had already proven their success. And the internet, social media, has sort of made this equality that's and expanded where people go to find content.
Yeah, that was
So
actually something I did want to talk about is how you had seen the industry change in your 20 years? Specifically, the opportunities for females and how females are respected and treated. And then a second point to that is, what can we be doing better? Because it started to turn its
I think the more I think I have always thought of myself not as a female director, but as a director.
Mhm.
So that hasn't changed for me at all. And
Yeah.
if I had looked at the obstacles as opposed to the opportunities, I would never have gotten anywhere. I would have just quit.
Yes.
So, but what has changed drastically, besides the fact that we are very much discovering how much talent there is out there, and is that when we expand this universe, we tell different stories,
Mhm.
and that those stories are being welcomed. I have a protege, a young actress,
Mhm.
um, who I had met, and then I ended up directing a web series she created, um, who just sent me a deck for a sitcom she has created, and I thought, it's so well done. It I'm just so excited for her. You know, she's been in all the right programs. She's focused, she's talented, but it excites me so much because what this sitcom is about is like nothing we've ever seen. And I went, oh, what a great story. This is and it and I think it will be very popular, and I sent it off to 4 other people this morning to try to help her,
Wow.
because I thought, this is a great idea. This is so beautifully presented. This is, you know,
Yeah.
and she's the right person, because she's a person I can recommend without hesitating because of her work ethic,
Mhm.
her enthusiasm, her discipline, her entrepreneurial sense, her focus. She's got the perfect package. I have no doubt she's going to explode.
Amazing. Well, so excited to see what that is. And hindsight is
Yes,
always 2020.
Mr. Steele. I did tell her back in one, I said, before you send it to this person, make sure there's no conflict of interest, because this person might be developing something along the same line and you don't want. Oh, so let me just say this. If you're developing something yourself, protect yourself.
Yes.
You probably will not get it off the ground by yourself. But for instance, I have optioned a book series that has 4 books in it. And it's about getting the contract right
Mhm.
between what, and it's not that I don't trust the person I'm working with who wrote these fabulous novels. I do. And I love the way he writes.
Yeah.
Um, but it's about defining expectations so that no one is disappointed.
Yeah. And it's
You
always
know,
better to
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
be
And it's also,
careful.
it's a job, it's a profession.
Yes.
And professions work with contracts and agreements, and you should just, you know, have one. I mean, I won't read anything anyone sends to me without a release.
Yeah.
I have to protect myself.
You've also directed a number of episodes for NCIS New Orleans. How did you get involved with that show and blowing things up there?
Okay. I've known Scott Bakula for decades. So I know that I was on his first list of directors he was requesting.
Mhm.
I happened to also be on the list of directors requested by Jimmy or James Heyman, who was the producer director on the show.
Hmm.
Um, so I was coming in with that in my 2 people who were key to the show, Jimmy for choosing all the other directors and Scott for requesting me,
Yeah.
um, with the upper hand. Uh, Now, that being said, I didn't have a huge amount of action yet
Mhm.
on my resume, so I was a little bit at a disadvantage. And on any first season of a show, they're going to go with known entities.
Yeah.
They're going to stack the deck.
Yeah.
I was not stacking the deck. So even though I was requested, I didn't get a job that first season, in the first order. Then, of course, they ordered second half of that first season,
Yeah.
the back 9, and I didn't get one of those either, despite, everyone loved me and countless meetings at CBS with executives and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I went, how can I stack the deck in my favor? So I called Jimmy, or I emailed Scott, I think it was Jimmy, and I said, hey, listen, I have to be in Atlanta to teach a seminar. Why don't I come through New Orleans on the way there and back and spend a couple days on set? And he goes, great. And I could choose when I was going to be in Atlanta. He said, this is the date when the exec producer is writing the episode. Come then. Or somebody he wanted me to meet, and he was pairing me up with another woman director. I think there were Bethany Rooney had directed that season, and an NCIS tried and true director named Leslie Libman, who I ended up shadowing.
Okay.
So I got to be on set. Then I came home from that, and I thought, okay, well, I paid for myself to go to New Orleans. I thought, and I still didn't get an episode. And I mentioned this to Bethany Rooney, and she said, she brainstormed with me. She goes, I'm not directing NCIS New Orleans, but I am directing NCIS. And I just finished this episode, and I'm going to be editing. Why don't you come and spend a couple days in the editing room with me? And as we came from lunch that day, we passed Mark's trailer, and she introduced me. I spoke to Mark Harmon for less than 20 seconds. The next day, I got an episode for the following season.
I applaud that persistence. That is amazing.
Well, I was just talking to another director who's probably got 400 episodes under his belt, a brilliant film historian who told me he flew himself up to Vancouver to take a meeting with the exec producer. And then he got one of those episodes, or 2 of those episodes, because they block shot them. Mm-hmm. But, it's going that extra mile says something about you.
Absolutely. And that applies to all aspects.
The only time it can backfire is if you're shadowing too much, and you just become a professional shadower, and everybody goes, well, why is she shadowing again? Or why is he shadowing again? And no one's giving them a job. Yeah. So Bethany has strong feelings about that. I less so, because I always think familiarity breeds opportunity.
Yeah.
As opposed to the saying familiarity breeds contempt. I don't believe in that.
Now, you've already talked about how that you are helping younger directors and creators coming up. Was there a mentor or someone that really shaped your perspective on the industry?
Basically 2. It was Phil Runo, with whom I wrote the sitcom career book, who basically let me do shots with him for close to 90 episodes. And then the person who upped my game in terms of visual style on a sitcom was Michael Lembeck, both of whom remain very, very close friends. And then in terms of our episodic, there were a lot of great people I shadowed. Great. But the person who taught me the most was, hands down, Bethany Rooney.
Wow.
And, and then we wrote, Directors Tell the Story together. My 3rd book in between was acting for young actors.
Amazing. I want to get to the books in 1 second. I wanted to ask, just on the topic of shadowing there, for any actors that are listening that want to become hyphenate like actor directors, or actually make the full leap.
These programs are ridiculously competitive.
Yes.
And the people who are coming into them, unless you're the star of a show or a person who's already working on a show and is known to the show, they're going to have the advantage over you. So my advice to anyone who wants to become a hyphenate is directors direct. The person who heads the Directors Initiative at the DGA with Bethany Rooney is my friend Todd Holland. And Todd says, joy, craft, network, repeat. Always retain your joy. always expand your network, always work on your craft, and then repeat. But the advice he also gives directors who come to him is, you want to direct? Great. If you don't have a body of work yet, 12 films in 12 months. And I always add, the first 5 can be made on your iPhone.
Yeah.
I wanted to see you practicing your craft.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying spend a huge amount of money. I'm saying practice your craft as a director.
Absolutely.
Directors direct. And when I was coming up, you couldn't do this without a lot of money, because equipment, developing film, all of that stuff was ridiculously expensive. There has been a democratization of that.
Yeah.
So if you're a director and you want to direct and you're not directing, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a hard ass on this. It's your own fault.
Absolutely. There's no excuses at this point.
You should be practicing on your own. And if there's technical things you don't know, so if you're coming from an acting and you know acting, okay, so you don't know the technical stuff, pick up. There's a wonderful book that I use as my kind of handbook of what I don't know technically. It's called Cinematography Theory and Practice by Blaine Brown. It's the same press that Bethany and I, my last 2 books are with, Focal Press. And it's a brilliant book. It's my handbook.
Amazing. Now, from that, I want to dive into, you've written, is it 4 books now?
4 books. The 5th proposal is ready to go out, hopefully early next week.
Amazing. Well, best of luck with that one. Can you just tell us a little bit about the importance to you to give from the other side of the camera back to actors and educate them through the books? And you also teach.
Yeah, I teach a lot. I used to be on the directing faculty at USC. I just don't have time for that anymore, and I miss it a bit. But I am completely dedicated to advocacy. So in terms of ABC, CBS, AFI, HBO Access, the Warner Brothers program, the First Time Directors program at the Directors Guild, the Directors Initiative program at the Directors Guild. I am an instructor for all of them, and love that I get to do this. During this pandemic, I was just counting the number of Zoom seminars I've done, how many universities I've gone to, starting at NYU. I did my own alma mater, Penn State, UC San Diego just asked me to come in a couple of weeks. So I love that sort of giving back. But the books were written, the sitcom one started because there was actually a platform. I was trying to create something for the internet with Phil Ramuno, who had been one of my teachers and mentors. And we were at Paramount for a big meeting trying to access their library of sitcoms to be the teaching tool that went with our instruction. And there's a huge amount of red tape to go through because writers, who owns material, and if it's only been licensed for television production, to use it for another aspect it's a mishigas. It's a huge mess.
Yeah.
And with every book I've written where I've had excerpts of things, it's taken 4 times as long to get permission to use the excerpts as it has to write the entire book. So it's a huge, complex issue.
Yeah.
So as I was leaving that meeting at Paramount, I said, here's the thing. If Paramount doesn't partner with us on this, it'll be fine. He said, this could make a great book. And Phil and I turned it into the sitcom career book. And then we wrote an update of it, the new sitcom career book.
Yeah.
And then because with publishing, you very often have a contract where you owe your publisher 2 more books after your first one, or at least the right of first refusal. Yeah. So when I went back to them and I said, I'd really love to write an acting craft book. And they said, we have some of those titles. We don't have one for kids. I said, well, listen, I've done a huge amount of children's programming by that point. Yeah. My agent used to sell me to say, she actually likes kids. I don't know if I had to. Yeah, I did have 2 kids of my own because I think I dedicated the book to well, to them, and to an older actress named Edith Fields, who had said to me, I said, I don't know if I want my kid Tim to be an actor. And she said, acting is a noble profession. And it changed my whole idea about the idea of giving this gift to the next generation of young actors coming up. So they said, and said to them, acting book. I said, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to just change the references from, something from 6 Feet Under to SpongeBob SquarePants. I said, it's going to be the same book. I teach kid actors to act with the same idea of honing the real elements of craft the way I teach an adult. I said, all that changes are the examples I give them. And then the third book was a directing book I did with Bethany. And the fourth one, I wish I could say was my idea because it's so brilliant, but it's not. Anna Weinstein came to me, referred by a wonderful actress and writer named Toni Kalem. And she said, I have 3 books out already. This is the 4th one in the series. There's already the 5th, 6th, I think, and 7th book in the series ready to go. She said, but this is one I don't want to do. I want you to do this one on your own based on all the other books. And it's basically, I was the editor on it. And I asked I handpicked 30 to 35 people in the industry who I knew were articulate or had something something very specific to say about a specific subject, because Anna's whole premise for all of these books is getting started, and this cycle, this circle that starts with getting started and ends with starting again, and in between are all these other steps she thinks is in a career. And I basically asked 30, somewhere between 30 and 35 colleagues to either do essays, Q&As that I designed, and or conversations with each other. And I'll give you an example of a conversation. And the actress who has probably directed more than anyone else in all of Los Angeles is a brilliant actress named Sue Ann Spoke. And Sue Ann had been on the board of Deaf West. And I wanted to have an aspect about actors who are hearing impaired getting work. And I said, first of all, I'm a little nervous about not asking the right questions. And you've worked in this. She had been a series regular who signed on, oh God, I think it was a CW show. I can't remember the name of it. But she, and she had been on the board at Deaf West, as I had said. And I said, why don't you and Shoshana have a conversation together? And then, so there were 3 ways that worked in that book: conversations, interviews, or essays. And that's how that book came. And then my next book, we're not going to talk about, but it's a companion to one of the other books.
Oh, amazing.
Yes.
And I appreciate you sharing that about the concept of acting for children or young performers is the same as acting for adults, because we have a great volume of young performers that are actually listening with their parents on the podcast.
Right.
And I think it's really helpful for them to realize it's not learning how to do it one way and then learning how to do it another way past 18. The concept is still the same.
It's about giving them craft so that everything they learn as children can be applicable to an entire career. And I'll tell a negative story. One of the impetuses for that book, not just because I wanted to write an acting book, I was given an opportunity to shadow on a sitcom that was probably in its 6th, 7th season. It was a huge success, and there were a number of children on it. I'm going to be purposely vague about this. And I looked at those kids and I thought, they're no better actors than they were the first season. And I said, that's child abuse. If they're going to do 22 episodes a season and get to practice with 22 little plays, why aren't they better having done it over and over? Absolutely. So in my opinion, and it's the way I direct when I direct young people, is I always tell them what I need, but I always tell them why. so that 3 weeks later, when I need the exact same thing,
Yeah.
I'll go, it's just like that thing. Remember how we worked on that?
Yep.
So there's a repetition in terms of their learning. And it's about building craft.
Absolutely.
And it's the same for adults. So,
Exactly.
I just have to be careful with crafted adults that I don't become that little school marm.
Hey, any insight is always appreciated, even if it's not in the moment sometimes. You've directed countless hours of television. I'm sure it's impossible to pick a favorite project, but is there an episode that you're particularly proud of helping bring to life?
A particular episode. I get the question series.
Yes.
And there was a
trying to take
series
it a little different way.
I will. My first episode of NCIS New Orleans, and not because it was my first, but because I got the Katrina episode. And the responsibility of telling that story well and knowing that the writer had written a beautiful episode and that I know that I knocked it out of the park and was therefore invited back on a difficult episode. I'm really proud of that one.
Amazing. Now, you have worked with hundreds and through your books, thousands of actors, but for those that you have worked with on set or in the audition room or in a classroom, what are some memorable things that you have seen that left like a positive lasting impression? Either the attitude the actor came into the room with or a choice on set, but memorable things.
I'm going to tell you a different memorable thing.
Okay.
There's a bunch of actors I know who are also directors. Here's what impresses me consistently, whether they're a director or not, an actor who has a 360 awareness. Then it's just not about them in the scene, that they're aware of everything else going on around them.
Yeah.
Which does not exclude them being hyper-focused on being in the scene and being in character. But I'm always blown away by that. And I often think it makes them better actors.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, last question we ask everyone on the podcast. What is one thing you would go back and tell your younger self?
That making mistakes is great.
I love that.
You learn from them.
Yeah.
And unless someone dies, almost everything is repairable.
Yeah, very true. All right. Thank you so much.
Actors, don't get tattoos. They take too much time to cover up.
Mom.
No, it's not a mom. It's a director. It's a director thing. It takes too much time to cover them up.
All of the releases now.
I have to double costumes. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah.
I don't mind piercings. I don't mind hair colors. I don't mind anything else.
Just no
tattoos. Not my favorite. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Okay.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining, and to my guest today, Mary Lou Belli. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to learn more about Mary Lou, you can find her on Instagram at Mary Lou Belli or MaryLouBelli.com. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe so you won't miss an episode. And tell a friend. Our goal here at What's My Frame is to encourage, educate, and inspire our creative community. You can also follow us on Instagram at What's My Frame for daily blogs, industry news, and weekly giveaways. I'm Laura Linda Bradley, and this is What's My Frame.